Ladies and gentlemen, it is lightning round. Better Sports Network, Fantasy Alarm, Kevin Tompkins, Andrew Cooper, Britt Flinn will be joining us straight from the Noog. Hope you all had a safe Thanksgiving. Hope it was a great time with your loved ones. Maybe get some Black Friday shopping in afterwards. But you know what? The football season never stops, except us, where we, had to take a little bit of a breather. But we're back to get into the swing of things now. The fantasy playoffs are here in just a couple short weeks. Coop, my man, how are you doing? How was your Thanksgiving? Yeah.
It was great, dude. It was all all I need next year, we need 2 Black Friday games. One was not enough, and especially, after Bezos saw Aaron Rodgers get hurt, I'm sure he immediately turned around and said, "We're priming it up big time next year." So, this is what I want. I want 3 Thanksgiving days, 2 on Friday, rivalry games in college on Saturday, and then a full slate on Sunday and then a Monday game. Is that so hard? Is that so tough?
I don't think it is. I think we will consume any football that is on our airwaves. It almost doesn't even matter. You could put like 2 middle school JV teams,
Right.
and we would probably all consume it, bet on it. You know the score. But
It never stops here, honestly. I mean, like, because I'm gonna do my regular leagues, then I'm gonna do the playoff leagues. I'm gonna do the baby bowl playoff challenge. Reach out to Rob Norton on that. I'm gonna do the FFPC playoff challenge, and then right after that, we're into talking free agency, and we're starting with best ball, and the cycle continues again. The journey, the adventure begins again.
and you
Dynasty leagues, best ball drafts, and then by the time before you even know it, we're back in the Scott Fish Bowl again, right?
Yep. Which is like that feels like the tent pole event of like when football season is starting up,
Yeah.
when the Scott Fish Bowl hits.
That's when the casuals come back. That's when the casuals come back. But we're here all year, baby, talking ball.
Exactly. We're excited to get into because fantasy playoffs are coming up before we know it. We were just talking about, all the best ball and dynasty. Like the fantasy playoffs are going to be here in a blink of an eye. In just a couple short weeks. So we're going to be helping you get through those. Coop, I know you had something.
Yeah, I wanted to, but the thing is, I want to see if we can wait for Britt first. But I have an interesting playoff implication scenario this week in one league. I'm not involved in it, but once Britt gets here, I want to lay it on you guys because it's an interesting one. I know where I stand on it. I think I know where you guys stand on it. But since I think we have Britt right here, ready to rock and roll. So we'll bring her in. Britt,
It's like
what's
the
happening?
bat signal. All you had to do is say
I
something
was
and
like, yeah.
boom.
So here,
What happened? My ears are burning.
here's what I got going on. I got a crazy situation here. Not too crazy, but let me lay it out for you, right? I got a league. It's a 14 team league where only 6 teams make the playoffs. So pretty thin, right? There's team A, B, C, and D. All right. Team A is 11-1. They are almost certainly going to get a bye week in this league, right? Team B, 7-5, but they have a ton of points. Now, teams C and D are both 6-6, and they're not going to catch Team B in points. Here's where the rub comes in. Team A plays Team B this week, and Team A already told the league in the group chat. They said, and because it's a 14-team league, the benches are kind of shallow. They have Josh Allen, they have Dalton Kincaid, they have Ravens defense. They said, I'm not dropping players to start guys. This week doesn't matter to me. I'm playing through it. The rub is they're basically letting Team B win, which is going to eliminate Team C and D from the playoffs, no matter what happens, pretty much, unless they go absolutely insane and outscore Team B over the next couple of weeks by like hundreds of points. In this situation, is that just you just turn to Teams C and D and say, hey, you know what, tough luck, or I mean, what's your feelings on something like that?
Yeah, I think, if you have that commanding of a lead in the league, obviously you want to go into the playoffs with the team that has gotten you that far. Do I think that it's kind of, tough luck for team C and D? Yeah, it is, but that's the nature of fantasy football. And, is he even going to win if he drops those players?
Right.
Who knows that loss would be automatic. Team B could just win outright. And sometimes I talk about it when I talk about bye weeks. There's 2 schools of thought: to space out your bye weeks. That way you're not crushed when these big bye weeks happen. Or 2, I'm just going to take everybody who has the same bye week and just take a loss that week. That way I can have the strongest team going forward. And I think that that's what they're doing. It sucks, but I mean, I'm kind of with Team A, honestly.
What do you think, Tompkins?
I think it would really behoove big NFL to not schedule bye weeks like super late and do like realize that fantasy football is like a massive cash cow and it's bringing in new viewers of your sport to where maybe if we've got all these, two teams in, week 6, 2 teams in week 14, like why can't we have 32 teams in the NFL? Like it might stink, as far as those middle weeks, but like take 16 or 8 teams for 4 weeks and you're good. Or take like a little mid-season like week for everybody. And the NFL cash cow will keep turning. There's an unlimited things to talk about with the NFL. So nobody really loses out there. Like, I don't know, but to get back to that, and that was my one tangent, I guess, or soliloquy, if you will. But
I'll tell you,
Team C and D, as Howard said.
I'll tell you what, you guys were a little more eloquent on that than I was. I said, I turned to team C and D. I said, score more points, you bozos, and then you wouldn't have this problem. But
it's that Boston boy in you.
And it's funny, and kind of has the right point here that there was a vote in the offseason. And the funny part is that Team D was not in favor of more bench spots and more IR spots. And we did add an IR spot, but we did not add a bench spot. So, you know what, dude? Little your own medicine there, right? Made your bed there, Team D. Pete.
Yeah.
Speaking of score more points, I just want to throw this up on the screen, and Howard will have some equity in this, by the way. I've been playing fantasy football since the year 2000. So we're looking at almost 25 years here. And
so that would make you like 100 years old.
Pretty much. I mean, give or take, a couple years here and there. But I've been
playing since 2002. But sorry to interrupt. Go back.
No, you're good. But I've never seen anything like this where I'm going to zoom in a little more. So if you guys can see this,
what in the
8
heck?
Eight teams are tied at 7-5 in the Kings Classic auction. 2 teams are at 6-6. 1 team at 5-7. There's 2 weeks left in the regular season. Like, this is absolutely insane to me that I've never seen this kind of like parity across the board. Like, this is an actual meat grinder.
That's wild, dude. Now, what's the tiebreaker? It's points?
Yeah.
So the 6-6 teams are still in it, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, 5-7 team. I mean, as long as they tie, they can get in the mix.
Yes. As he's not eliminated. Jim Coventry eliminated. Shame. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Exactly. But yeah, and I'm playing Curtis this week, so that'll be a lot of fun. With he's outscoring everybody by I think like 150 points. So that should be a lot of fun. But look, fantasy playoffs, you got to get there. And we're going to certainly help you get there because we're going to be talking about the fantasy playoff schedules as far as what teams had the best, what teams had the worst, how you can play them, who benefits, who's going to be a liability, potential liability. So Britt, since you got here straight from the Noogs, I know you're chomping at the bit to let us know who you think has the best playoff schedule and who stands to benefit.
Yeah, so I think that it's the Philadelphia Eagles. And I hate saying that as a Cowboys fan, but it's just true. They get the Seahawks in week 15, the Giants in week 16, and then they get the Cardinals. I don't necessarily know if Jalen Hurts is going to have those ceiling games, but it does definitely benefit the running backs, specifically DeAndre Swift and even Kenneth Gainwell. And Kenneth Gainwell comes into play because I think that the Eagles could get out to such a big lead that they kind of decide to semi-rest their starters, especially against the Giants and the Cardinals. So that running game is going to be just tremendous and huge. That said, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Dallas Goedert might not have as high of a ceiling going into the playoffs as you would think, because I think they're just going to be game scripted out of the entire game. So something to think of. But as a whole, I hate to say it, but it is the Eagles.
Yeah, man. And I'll tell you what, like, especially if you're, if you have Jalen Hurts, you probably have a pretty good team. If you have the bye week, that Seahawks team, when you look at like DVOA, they're still like they're actually worse than middle of the pack against the run. They're like 18th, right? But those last 2 games, the Cardinals and Giants, bottom 5. Just like, I mean, look at Ramondre Stevenson this weekend. They couldn't do anything. And even Ramondre, did all right. So it's like, it's going to be a steamroller for DeAndre Swift against the Cards and Giants to wrap this one up. So again, I guess you got to hope that the Cardinals can put up, and Tommy DeVito probably not, but you got to hope that the Cardinals can put up a fight and keep it competitive so they keep scoring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and with the Eagles offense being so condensed, I think that helps a little bit more in terms of getting those guys with Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, those guys, those targets and everything like that. But yeah, DeAndre Swift, the only thing that's really kept him back from being just an absolute lead crusher is the tush push or the brotherly shove. Jalen Hurts taking all those touchdowns. But Swift is still going to crush in his own way. Maybe they get Kenny Gainwell a little bit more involved to keep him fresh, but look, he's had a steady role the entire season. DeAndre Swift has with 60% of the snaps, pretty consistently, double-digit targets or double-digit carries in every single game but one. So that's definitely a guy that can crush. Coop, who is your best playoff fantasy schedule and stands to benefit from that?
Yeah, kind of a sneaky one here, but I was looking at similar info, and the Las Vegas Raiders face the Chargers, Chiefs, and Colts. So you can run on all those teams. It's great for Josh Jacobs, but those games, those type matchups have shootout potential. Like this Chargers team, the Chiefs, again, the Colts can actually hang too. So not only do you get the benefit of for Josh Jacobs, but it's a highly consolidated offense. Michael Mayer hasn't really stepped up to like carve out a huge role. I know he's playing more than Austin Hooper, but didn't really jump to the top of the, he didn't jump to the top of the pecking order. And because they use the fullback and because they use two tight ends, Hunter Renfrow and Trey Tucker aren't really playing a lot either. So you got Devontae Adams, you got Jacoby Myers, you have Josh Jacobs, highly consolidated and pretty good matchups, all three of them. So if you have those players, I know it hasn't been great, but you got to remember, this is at its core a small sample size game, right? So the best, at the end of the day, we could look back on a lot of these players and say, hey, you know what? I missed it along the way, but they had a pretty decent season. I feel like that would happen all the time with guys like AJ Green and Mike Evans.
That was Mike Evans last year,
where it's like all year long, we're like, man, this guy's killing me. And at the end of the year, you looked at it and you're like, oh, wait a second, he had 1,000 yards again.
Week 17, he absolutely crushed.
Exactly. So some of these guys, it's not like baseball where you're getting 400, 500 at bats, right? You get a couple games, and if you miss a couple, now your sample size is 5 games. So for a lot of these guys, man, this could be where they turn the season around and we look at it and say, oh, you know what, Devontae Adams wasn't so bad after all.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about Adams. That's because I'm take locked though, and also
you're dug in.
I'm dug in like a tick.
Right.
The nails are dug into the floorboards. There's no coming back from that. Yeah, I get it. I mean, trust me. Devontae Adams has been a lot more hit or miss than people want to realize this season. I mean, he's only had 5 games of double-digit targets, only 4 touchdowns this season. I know, right? I mean, you take that from like any other wide receiver, but I mean, Devontae Adams has set pretty lofty goals for himself. And, with the firing of the head coach and then obviously Aiden O'Connell taking over, somebody's got to take the hit. And look, Jacoby Myers was pretty much the focal point of the offense, with Josh Jacobs having that massive long run for the touchdown too, which crushed me in a couple leagues, by the way. But definitely like the Raiders call there. As far as mine, I do like the Rams a lot. And now getting Kyron Williams back certainly can help this offense at least gain some efficiency in the passing game. I mean, it's really not enough to have Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua. As weird as it is to say, having that run game there definitely makes defenses have to account for that. I mean, he absolutely destroyed worlds last week as the RB1. And now, fantasy playoffs, Commanders, Saints, Giants. I mean, the Saints defense isn't the Saints defense that we all thought they were going to be. Certainly the Commanders are a sieve, and the Giants, we know how they are. So I do like the Rams going forward. I mean, Stafford only had a second game of more than 1 touchdown pass, and he had 4 last week. So definitely like him going forward. He could be a guy that turns that up. If Cooper Kupp can get more healthy, Puka Nacua certainly has the ability to stud up as well. Being able to play off of that run game with the Rams certainly helps the passing game. So I definitely like gravitating toward that a little bit more. Look, Tyler Higbee scored 2 touchdowns. Like that was the quintessential Higbee game.
It was wild.
Yeah, classic, especially because I'm not sure if you saw, but there was an accident where they originally accidentally reported him as inactive, and it was a mistake. Did you see
Yeah,
that, Kev?
Jordan Rodriguez. Yeah, she had to
Right. It
backtrack
was
on that.
number 90 was inactive, and somehow he thought it was 89. I have no, it just dumb, dude. But
Mistake.
yeah. And I'll tell you what, on the Rams, I mean, Kyron Williams, 4 of his 6 games before he got hurt, he was crushing. Like he destroyed in those games. And then he comes back and he obviously drops like 38 fantasy points. You just have to survive the next 2 weeks, right? Like if you have a playoff spot locked up, great. But he's got the Ravens and Browns next 2 weeks. So not ideal short-term schedule, but obviously much rather play those guys now than play them in fantasy playoffs. Britt, do we have any update on Myles Garrett on the shoulder that he heard made the pop sound there?
I heard that he was getting an MRI done, but I haven't heard the results yet. So
yeah, I heard that
makes
too.
me a little nervous that they haven't released the results and they're like, oh no, everything's fine. Because this lag time in between when the MRI was done and when we're hearing about it or not hearing about it makes me a little nervous that they're doing some additional testing. Not great.
Right. And it was like, somebody, I was like digging around to find something, and somebody said avoided major injury scare, but then they didn't follow up with anything. So it's like, I don't know. How does that person have enough information to say that? They said like Myles Garrett and Amari Cooper avoid major injury scare and then didn't include any other information. It's like, what are you just throwing stuff against the wall?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a lot of journal. I mean, maybe that was AI. Who knows?
Oh man.
You never know.
I don't know if I could really say I'm at liberty to say anything more, or should I? But we can move on, I suppose. Britt, as far as your worst playoff schedule.
For me, it's going to be the Dolphins. They've got the Jets, which held Tua to under 10 fantasy points on Friday. Then they've got the Cowboys, who have not really allowed anybody to pass on them basically the entire year, with the exception of a couple people. And then they have the Ravens in week 17. Just not great, especially in week 17. I think that both of these teams could be fighting for a playoff spot. So I don't think there's any incentive for them to rest anyone. It's all going to depend on the health of Devon Achane. Tua, there's that narrative that he can't beat teams over 500. And so far, I mean, we still haven't seen him do it. So I am a little concerned about him. I have him in a couple leagues, and looking at it, I think that that's why it's one of my biggest concerns. I do not like him going up against the Jets and the Cowboys.
Yeah, I would want to throw an honorable mention out with a very similar schedule, which is the Ravens. This isn't mine. I picked somebody else for this one, but the Ravens play like the same teams because, as you mentioned, the Ravens play Miami, they play San Francisco, they play Jacksonville. So pretty gross there as well for them. And that's the thing about some of these games is I look at it sometimes and we say, okay, a lot of times we'll say, okay, good defenses, I want to fade all these guys. But then sometimes those games turn into the close games that end up being good ones, right? Like, Bills, the Bills Eagles game ended up being a great
game
one.
of the
So
year,
I look at some, right? So I look at some of these Dolphins Jets. That is the scariest one for me.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness it's on, the wild card weekend for playoffs. But that's the one where the Jets just drag everybody down, right? The Patriots used to be that team where when the Patriots had good players on defense, they would just good defense plus decent special teams plus bad offense drags everybody down. But I'm hoping that Dolphins Cowboys can be at least an okay one. And then Dolphins Ravens last year, if you remember, was a absolute firework fest. So, right, that was the one, but that went to overtime and Rashad Bateman had like a crazy touchdown. So like, I don't know, I remain hopeful, but for the guys that we depend on, as you pointed out, it's a bad spot for them. It's a bad spot for, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. So I don't know. What do you think, Kev?
Yeah, I don't like the spot. I mean, I am so flush with Miami Dolphins on my team, especially Mostert, Waddle, Hill, that, those are the weeks where, I mean, you got to kind of eat your vegetables when you draft those guys. And you take the good with the bad, and that's the bad part where you're hoping they can kind of just play over even the bad matchup. You might not get the upside, but he can at least certainly help you tread water. That's what you're hoping. So, definitely hate seeing the Dolphins and definitely hate seeing Jets Cowboys. I mean, that Dolphins Cowboys game could be a lot of fun, especially with knowing how fast paced Miami is, knowing how much Dallas just wants to pass the ball in all situations. So that could be one of those games that Coop was saying where that could be a track meet where defenses go out the window, Tua and, Dak Prescott are lighting the world on fire.
It just depends on whether or not they decide to line up Hill in the slot against Jordan Lewis, because Jordan Lewis has been kind of looking silly all season long. He is the big liability in that secondary. But if Tua throws anywhere near DaRon Bland, I mean, Bland has already set the record for pick sixes. And then who are you going to go to on the outside? Oh, Stephon Gilmore. So it all depends on the alignment and what they're going to do. And, if the Cowboys get Shaquille Leonard, who is visiting the team today, that's going to throw another level into that defense that's going to be really difficult to overcome. So I hope for fantasy sake that it is a fireworks show and a boat race, but I'm really nervous about it.
Yeah, I will say this to your point, Britt, because it's a good one, that a lot of teams been doing that against both the Jets and the Cowboys. And, the Cowboys did it against the Jets with CeeDee Lamb, where you have two good corners on the outside, so you can put the guy in the slot. And the Dolphins this past week with Tyreek Hill, Michael Carter was out, so it made it easier. Michael Carter 2, the cornerback. So Tyreek Hill actually played more snaps in the slot than he did out wide. So they're actually not scared to do that if that's the formula that it takes to win. I'm not sure with Waddle. Waddle actually played most of the game out wide, so maybe Waddle will be the sacrificial lamb in that game.
Yeah, definitely hate to see it. I will ask you, since you mentioned DaRon Bland, Britt, as the resident Cowboys fan, do you think that he should be getting Defensive Player of the Year consideration off of those pick sixes? Because I know it's been a lot of the talk that DaRon Bland has kind of worked himself into that discussion.
It's not just the pick sixes, but it's the interceptions. It is the pick sixes. It's the touchdowns defended. Stephon Gilmore, when he was with the Colts, I believe, won Defensive Player of the Year. He already had pretty much the same stat line with interceptions on the whole entire season as Bland has right now. He didn't give up a single touchdown. Bland's given up one. Okay, whatever. But Bland has had all of those pick sixes. So I do think that he should be in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. I know it's weird for a D-back to be in talks like that. It's normally, the linebackers, the pass rushers, things like that. But he set the single season record for pick sixes, and it's only week 12.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
It's insane.
And if Myles Garrett misses time, right, now the front runner's out on it. And I will say that, when Stephon Gilmore won, he did a lot of shadowing, and there weren't a lot of stats in terms of like deflected passes. It was almost entirely based on him intercepting passes and taking back for touchdowns, and the Pro Football Focus grades and the grades that we see around the industry, because it's not like he didn't rack up tackles, he didn't rack up passes defended, he just racked up a reputation for making plays and making people not want to throw it over there. So if DaRon Bland continues the pace he's on and he finishes the season as that guy, I just don't see what the difference is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, just looking at some of the, where books have him, he's right behind the Garrett and Parsons and Watt, consensus. So it's really going to be interesting to see, how that shakes up here. George Play into the chat here. Should I drop Bengals kicker for Detroit or Saints kicker? Evan McPherson for is it Patterson and Groupie?
I just updated my weekly kicker rankings this morning, because I do all the rankings will be updated by the end of the day today. So my rankings that I have here, what was it? Bengals kicker for Detroit or Saints?
Mm-hmm.
So for this week at least, I have Groupie ranked. I have Riley Patterson ranked ahead of all those guys. I have him ranked Patterson and then. Right, because Detroit, New Orleans play each other. And then Groupie. Yeah, but why are you holding on the Bengals kicker? They're terrible. They were only able to run 43 offensive plays this week. They couldn't get first downs.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I'd be I would have Patterson over there just because New Orleans has like everybody and their mother hurt right now on offense. How much are they going to be able to move the ball to even get in position to kick a field goal? I mean, that could be the thing where maybe Groupie gets like 2 or 3 shots at a 50-yarder because they can't get down inside the 25, but I would still go with Patterson. Consensus.
Yeah, folks out there, definitely feel free to throw questions in the chat. Whatever you got, waivers, lineup stuff, doesn't matter, dude. We'll hit on whatever today. We're hanging out. We're here for the people. So
because it's almost playoff time.
I'm fired
It
up.
is.
Let's
Excited.
go.
You had to mention the Bengals, and I had this is my in memoriam for Joe Burrow. It's tough scene out there. I miss our hashtag our Bengals. Definitely miss that. But as far as the worst fantasy playoff schedules for me, Seattle's definitely up there. I mean, I know Seattle is going with, they have a gauntlet even before that. I mean, we're looking at, let me just go through the gauntlet right now. They just played San Francisco, at Dallas, at San Francisco, Philly, Tennessee, can certainly be tough. And then Pittsburgh. I mean, that's really the toughest one there was Philly for me, because if you're going in with Seattle players, it's going to be tough sled to even get, something going. And should you advance, it gets a little bit later, but just going through that gauntlet, how much confidence can you have in starting, whether it be Kenneth Walker? I mean, you kind of have to start those guys, especially Lockett and Metcalf and Ken Walker if he comes back from his oblique injury. But if it's Zach Charbonnet, you have less confidence. Certainly Jackson Smith and Jigba falls into that same kind of bucket as Charbonnet too. But that's just a brutal gauntlet for the Seahawks. And it's not like Geno Smith is raising up any of their guys' play either. Geno Smith has not been 2022 Geno Smith.
Here's the real problem with that schedule is that it's not favorable for any particular player, right? So the Eagles, you can't throw on the outside and you can't run. So it's good for the guys over the middle. Say you got a tight end. I mean, you're not going to start Noah Fant, but that's a good matchup for tight ends, but it's terrible for everybody else. The next game, the Titans, you can't run on them. You can't throw over the middle. They're the number 2 team versus the tight end, but you can throw on the outside. So now all of a sudden it's like, okay, what are you going to do? Bench Lockett week 1 versus the Eagles, and then you're going to bring Lockett in the next week. And then the following week against the Steelers, now you can run on them. You can't throw to the tight end. Like it's at least with some of these matchups, you can say, okay, we can't run on these guys, but at least we can throw. With this one, it's like now you need fill-ins. Now you need to mix and match. I hate those schedules. Those are the worst, especially when there's like one match. It happens at tight end all the time. When you look at the tight end schedule and it's, 2 good matchups, and then right smack in the middle, week 16 is like the Browns. And you're like, now I need a second tight end because I can't risk losing my season. Even though the other 2 matchups are good, now you got to use all sorts of roster spots. So yep. I don't know. Schedules like that are brutal. I'd rather have it be like, at least if they're all good teams versus the run, you can still start the pass catchers,
Yeah. And for me, it really does rely on the health of Geno Smith because he looked absolutely horrendous on Thursday night. Like they should not have had him out there. I don't care how much better he is than Drew Lock. Like he was not healthy. He got re-injured, it looked like, for a time. I mean, it just looked bad. And who knows how long that injury is going to linger. And injuries plus a bad matchup, like, is just nearly impossible to overcome. And DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and JSN, they were all 3 in the same realm. I think they were back to back in fantasy points scored this week. And it was all terrible. So how long is that injury going to last? How long are these guys going to be bad?
Down bad. It's down bad when you're starting Kenny Pickett over Geno Smith this week. By the way,
look out for Kenny, dude. Matt Canada's gone. My
12:35 Eastern decision on Sunday morning was taking out Jonnu Smith and putting in Pat Freiermuth at tight end, and it didn't get me a win, but feel a lot better about Pat Freiermuth being a low end tight end 1 now.
Oh yeah, dude, 11 targets, man. He led all players in receiving yards this week. How crazy is that? I mean, he had 120. So it's kind of
play of the game with 24-yard pass down the middle. Like that tells you everything I mean, I tweeted it, the kind of passing charts from Pickett last week to this week. Nothing in the middle. Right. Eddie Faulkner, Mike Sullivan, the new play caller in Pittsburgh. Look, you got a healthy Freiermuth now. You could attack the middle of the field. It's only going to help for Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, the explanations I saw is that they like Canada, the guy. They believe in his play calling, but and his his approach. But they basically said that the problem was with the young quarterback in Kenny Pickett. He was trying to use too many like cutesy concepts from college, all these like different high end stuff, and Pickett wasn't developing with that. And that's what they basically said is, hey, let's we got to move on from this guy. I'm sure he's going to land somewhere, hopefully in college, where he'll probably thrive. And then Pickett, they just said, hey, you know what? Let's get back to the bread and butter. Let's take more risks. And Deontay Johnson even said, we went out there, we played fearlessly, and we threw the ball around and didn't really care. We had fun, and I mean, it was a lot more fun for fantasy football. That's for sure, right?
Johnson sure looked like he was having a ton of
Yeah,
fun. Let me tell you.
max effort. That's always been Deontay Johnson's game.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
That was like that was Jay Cutler-esque, by the way. Though that one Wildcat play where he's just kind of just sitting there.
And the fumble.
Horrible.
Yeah.
No, it was bad. I got secondhand embarrassment watching that. And then it just kept coming on all the replays because that's all any of the news outlets wanted to report. And every time it came on, I was just like, no, I can't watch this anymore. He just gave up.
Did anybody see Deontay Johnson remove any of the Steelers stuff from his social media, by the way? Were people on that?
I wouldn't. Did he do it? I wouldn't be surprised.
No, we would have known that, but yeah. I mean,
he deleted all the pictures of him and Matt Canada. I mean, if I had an offensive coordinator that would throw me 140 plus targets a year, then I would be sad if he was gone.
Yeah, I mean that's true. That's fair.
Let's get into some of these questions. We got the chat popping here. Jaden Rogers, do I trade Lamb for Diggs for the Allen Diggs stack in the playoffs? I mean, I'm not doing it just to get the stack. I don't know if I do that with the way. I mean, I don't want to see the Bills' offense is broken by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not trading Lamb right now with how Dallas is throwing the ball in all situations. That offense is on a heater right now. I don't want to deal any part of that. I mean, even Brandon Cooks is like right now like a low end wide receiver too, just based on how this offense is operating. So I'm not trading any part of that. And even though Diggs is pretty awesome, I'm not trading Lamb.
Yeah, I like stacks if it's like these best ball tournaments where you're just trying to shoot for best possible case scenario, which would be Diggs and Allen 3 weeks in a row just go crazy, right? But the concern with stacks in redraft is you don't need to destroy everyone the way you do in those best ball tournaments. You just need to win. And the problem is with the stacks is you have all the downside that gets involved with that, where if Josh Allen has a down game, that means Diggs has a down game and your season's over. So you can spread out the risk a little bit by going Lamb and Allen, So I actually kind of prefer to leave it spread out. I really don't factor stacks much into my decision making in general, even in best ball, only as a tiebreaker. So I just leave it the way you got it.
Yep. I am definitely going to lean the Lamb side here, not only because that trade feels lateral, but because, again, in week 16, they get the Dolphins with Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey on the outside, Lamb in the slot. That's where that ball is going to go over and over and over again. Much more upside with Lamb going forward, I think, than Diggs.
Yeah, my guess is that the kid that has Lamb or the kid that has Diggs can't lose this week, and he's just he's trying to get away with doing a trade that's potentially even an upgrade, but at least is a lateral trade, but saves him that game. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. I wouldn't help that kid out.
Also, who is still doing trades right now? Talk to your commissioner.
I don't mind the trade deadline, like a extended trade deadline up into the playoffs. That's where I probably have the the thing about that. But
the thing is, here's the thing that where I side with Britt is that the kid with Diggs, he's probably desperate right now. He probably has to win this week. So when you don't do that trade. Now what does he do? He turns around and trades Diggs for anyone that's playing this week. He trades Diggs for Deontay Johnson
for like 75 cents on the dollar.
Exactly, because he can't lose this week, and that's where it kind of skews things for playoffs. That's my argument to have the trade deadline a little earlier.
True. George Play 01. I'll get to the question because he did post his entire team here. Should I drop Charbonnet for Elijah Mitchell as a handcuff or pick Palmer or Watson? I will say, like, just looking at his team, running back CMC, Pollard, Warren, Keaton Mitchell. Yeah, Charbonnet's his RB5. And then his wide receivers, Waddle, Dell, Olave, who's likely not going to be playing. If you can get, I would drop Charbonnet for Watson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or honestly, Elijah Mitchell's not crazy either, just because, like, think about it. If CMC gets hurt, you're going to start Elijah Mitchell. If Tony Pollard gets hurt, are you starting Charbonnet?
He's got Dowdle.
You're probably starting Warren or Dowdle. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I wish I had more information on the injury that Kenneth Walker is dealing with, because he's still not practicing. I wish they would be a little bit more.
Obliques are tough.
Right. And that's why I wish they would be a little bit more transparent, because he's already dealt with an abdominal injury earlier on. I think it was in training camp that he dealt with one. So is this a new one? Is it a re-aggravation of what he's already got going on? These are details that I would like to know before I answer this question.
And it doesn't help that Pete Carroll is so overwhelmingly positive, no matter how negative it is. The news is, he really is. Like, we want people to be like transparent, and Mike McDaniel's a good player or a good coach as far as just telling it how it is. Pete Carroll is like sunshine and rainbows and lollipops, and even though he's like, dude, like, got into like a fender bender or something like that, and it's going to be out for 6 weeks. But
yeah.
Josh in the chat has a good question. What do we think of the JT news?
Fire up your Zach Moss. I know. Yeah,
it sounds bleak.
Doesn't sound good, dude,
to say the least. Yeah, that was why Zach Moss pretty much has any kind of hold on rosters, is as contingent value. We know this dude can certainly pick up the rock and do what we saw in the beginning of the season until JT came back. Even when JT came back, it kind of eased him in, and Zach Moss was still getting a lot of run. And now Zach Moss might be, getting people into the playoffs and maybe potentially further. That could be very interesting for the Colts. They certainly need somebody to tote the rock, and Zach Moss can be that guy.
With fresh legs.
I got to throw some money. I got to throw some money at him to play defense in a league where I'm sitting here looking at the kid I'm playing against. That Zach Moss, his team is good, except his RB2 he has nobody. So and he has 20. Here's a real question: we both need to win. He has $22. I have 25. Do I throw down $23 on Zach Moss just to be sure?
I would,
just to be sure.
Yeah.
$1, Bob.
The thing is, I don't need a running back in that particular league. My running backs are awesome.
Who cares? Do you want somebody putting up 20 points on you?
You're putting up you're boxing out. You're Ben Wallace in the paint.
I don't want that. My running backs.
Yeah. I have a question. Do you have a trade deadline?
Yeah. No, that one does have a trade deadline. So, yeah, I guess I will play defense on that one. I rarely do play defense, but in this case, I might have to.
Yeah. Let me see here. Hell, I have O'Connell and Fields in a 14-team Superflex. Do I add Drew Lock?
No. I don't think so.
I don't know if I would quite hate myself enough to pull the trigger on Drew Lock, but I get it, because it's a bit dicey at QB2 for you, but I don't know what Drew Lock's going to be doing for you, because I'd be starting Aiden O'Connell every single time over him, unless he's hurt.
Right.
And Fields had a bad game. It was, the ADOT was horrific, but I think they're going to figure some stuff out. He's not going to have bad games like yesterday all the time.
He'll be all right.
I just want to dispel some rumors in our chat that we are not live. It is 12:40 Central Time right here. I apologize. I do not subscribe to a newspaper anymore, or else I would hold that up and show the date. But we are as live gets. I just want to make sure that everybody here in the chat, by the way, if you have not liked and subscribed to the Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel, go ahead and do that right now. We need to feed our kids. I don't want to be feeding my kids peanut butter smeared on a playing card. So go ahead and hit that like button, please.
Yeah, the cat has no
It's live.
food.
It's live. It's live, but it is scripted. So we're all reading off a script that I wrote yesterday, including that comment in the chat asking if we were live. That was a plant. He also has a script, and everybody in the chat except for you has a script, and we're ignoring your comments for a reason. So, just so you know.
Oh, so let's go back to Hal's comment, because I was thinking that he had somebody else and that he was just talking about like getting ready for the playoffs. No, I'm a dum-dum. It's week 13. They're both on bye. But I don't think that Locke is going to play this week. So I don't really think I would honestly just leave it the way it is and like leave my quarterback spot empty and play somebody else in my super flex.
Could be worse. Could have had Josh Dobbs, who got you -5 points.
That was horrific.
I wrote that in the script yesterday. I said, now Britt calls herself a dum-dum.
I mean, that's pretty par for the course, though.
Right. It's stuff, right?
True, and yeah, that's pretty true.
That's true. Yeah. So before we do, I want to do a showdown lineup this week. I want to make sure we get to one. So I want to do my team that has the tough schedule. And I'll tell you what. So we talked about Kev's earlier, where the schedule is kind of choppy. There's kind of good matchups in there, but for different players. This one is a good example of the opposite, where it's a kind of a smooth schedule, where it's bad for certain players, but it actually should be all right for other ones. The Houston Texans schedule is awful for running backs and tight ends. So you've got the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns, and then the Tennessee Titans again. Depending what happens to Myles Garrett, maybe it could change, the complexity of that Browns defense. But those are the top two teams versus the tight end, and they're also great in versus the run. Now, here's where it gets interesting: is the Titans are one of the best teams versus the tight end. They are one of the best teams versus the run. I think they're the fourth best team in DVOA versus the run. 28th versus the pass, right? And as Britt has recently pointed out, the Cleveland secondary has not been healthy. They've been nicked up. They've, you can kind of throw on them. You can't really run, but you can throw. So I think that this schedule, terrible for the running backs and for Dalton Schultz, but might be all right for Nico Collins, for Tank Dell, for CJ Stroud. So you really have to look around. I've said it a million times, but if you've been leaning on Dalton Schultz or Devin Singletary, you need to make other plans, because that schedule, I don't know if any amount of injuries are going to change the ability of those teams up front, right? I guess if Myles Garrett is out and Jeffrey Simmons were to get hurt, that could change things drastically, but we have to plan for these matchups to be as bad as they have been all year, and they have been bad.
See, the thing with me, and this may be just me being positive, but you couldn't really run against the Jaguars either. But Devin Singletary had so much usage in the pass game that he was worth it. Like he had a decent game. And that's what I'm hoping happens against the Titans. Now, if you're a Dameon Pierce manager, no, bye-bye.
Do those still
Get out of
exist?
here with that. No, you would be surprised.
I will.
Well, here's the thing.
Go ahead.
Coming into that game, the Jaguars were letting up the single most receptions to running backs out of the backfield at 7.09 per game. So we could at least sit there before the game and say, well, you can't run on them, but at least you can throw the running back. The Titans are letting up the single fewest receptions to the running backs.
I'm trying to be positive. Okay. Listen.
3.18. Nobody's letting up fewer receptions to the running backs. And the Browns are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7th on that list. So I like the idea, but those boys up front, they're nothing to trifle with.
Yeah. Tired. Derrick Henry gets to play the Texans twice in the fantasy playoffs. Wired. Tank Dell gets to play the Titans twice in the fantasy.
That's right, dude. Yeah, and that stinks for me. I have so much Singletary in best ball, Britt, that I'm like trying to figure out. I'm like, well, maybe, but I don't know, man. It's pretty scary. At least in best ball, I don't have to make any decisions. It's just, at the whims of the fantasy lords.
By the way, we are advancing one of the best ball mania teams that we drafted. It's it was a hyper fragile team where we drafted Derrick Henry, Ramondre Madison, and I think McKinnon, but the rest of our wide receivers were pretty good. So
McKinnon's sick.
Well, I'll take Derrick Henry or Ramondre with like a sprinkle of Madison maybe catching the flex.
Yeah.
But,
I don't
yeah.
hate it. It could definitely be worse. I mean, all of my best ball teams are just injured, out, IR, out. So
A couple of years ago, Devin Singletary he was the year before last,
Yeah.
right? Not last year. The year before last, he had like 6 touchdowns in the last
Dude
4
was
games.
crushing.
It was literally like Devin Singletary, Gabe Davis, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you had those 3 guys, then you smashed.
Yeah. And I think Rashad Penny too.
Yep. Rashad Penny was in there. Hunter Renfro was in there as well. Yeah, it was very strange, man. It's not the usual suspects a lot of times.
Let's answer the couple questions in the chat, and then let's get to our showdown lineup here. Josh, it's a 20-team PPR. Let's see. My roster is Lamar, blah, blah, blah. I got J-Mo, Pop Douglas. What do you see as possible moves? And then he did toss in a trade. Would you trade Pop Douglas for Mostert? If you can do that, like run to the podium.
Immediately, especially because you got Aaron Jones banged up and now Jonathan Taylor banged up. I mean, like, you didn't name a running back that you can start this week.
Right.
As of this moment, assuming the Jonathan Taylor thumb issue is what it is. I mean, is Aaron Jones going to play? I know he obviously didn't play last week.
Yeah, it's not looking great. I mean, Aaron Jones has just been banged up the entire season. I mean, look, anytime you got to rely on the 14 carries for 41 yards of AJ Dillon every week, I think you're in rough shape. But
now I will say this. That's a pretty sick team for a 20-team league.
yeah.
for a 20-team league, that's
great
look,
team.
I would kill for that in a 14-team league. Like
That's what I'm saying.
that's how you do it.
So pretty good squad.
Britt, I won't throw up the breaking news video, but I understand that you had breaking news.
Yeah, so this came in about 30 minutes ago from one of the beat writers for the Colts saying, talked to JT after Sunday's game and got no indication he was hurt. As it turns out, he has a thumb injury. And while there have been no decisions, injured reserve is on the table.
God.
Is that his carrying his right?
I would have to assume so.
Put a club on, man. Just
And
like a nice
then-
paper mache, like little like divot for the ball to go in.
He ends it by saying it's definitely a legit injury.
That sucks.
Oh, I don't like that.
Don't like it at all, except
Yeah.
I am playing against
Drop-
a manager who has JT this week. So yay me.
Drop that dough on Moss, baby.
Right.
Drop
Oh,
that
he's already rostered.
cash money.
Crossed our IRL Twitch gang.
The Twitch gang, dude. Where you been at? Twitch
Right,
gang?
Twitch gang. Hey, better late than never. Do you take Pacheco or Jamar Chase the rest of the year? I mean, it certainly depends on your roster, but I kind of like Pacheco here. I know it goes against everything that I stand for, but kind of like
Jamar Chase literally had to like catch tipped balls that weren't even intended for him to have a decent game.
the
this
Zach
week.
Wilson
Like,
corollary with Garrett Wilson. Like this is your life. Like peel back the curtain and it's Zach Wilson to Garrett Wilson.
And Jake Browning went to college with Drew Sample.
You dub.
that's true. Wow, best friends, dude.
Mhm.
That's why Sample scored that clunky boy
Mhm.
touchdown.
That was a clunky boy
Look out.
touchdown. I loved that.
That's
For all
what
my
was-
big
that's
boys.
what was clunky.
Right. It was Clunky Boy Sunday. We had Sample getting in the end zone. Tyler Higbee with 2 touchdowns. I mean, who needs
day,
Short
dude.
King Fall
Pat-
or winner when he had Clunky
Pat-
Boy winner?
Pat Fryermuth leading all pass catchers in receiving yards, including all the wide receivers. Clunked up. Let's get clunked
Get
up.
clunked. Speaking of clunk, not a lot of clunks here because this could be. I think the whole field is going to be very heavy on the Cowboys in showdown here. So you got to figure the entire field's going to be on some sort of Dak Prescott or CeeDee Lamb. About a Brandon Cooks captain.
You got to pick. But
Cowboys defense captain.
let's.
Yeah, Cowboys
do the
defense
captain.
captain
Yeah.
is definitely viable.
You want to do it?
It's cheap.
It gets us. It'll get us more pieces in there. So yeah, why not? 84 hundo. Let's rock the house. The only thing is the worst part about it is we have to play a Seahawk.
I know.
That is the
Yeah.
worst part about showdown is that we have to play Seahawk.
Can we play their kicker?
We gotta start Metcalf then. You start them if you're starting Cowboys defense as captain, you just start the most expensive.
Yeah, I
Seahawks
think
you can
that's
get.
right.
Yeah, that probably shaves. And then we're just the usual suspects.
Yep. Got to get
Yeah,
Lamb. Got to get
exactly.
Dak in there.
Cavante Turpin, Jalen Tolbert.
I mean, the way we're going to get leverage and being able to do that is probably eschewing one of Cooks or Pollard and playing even like a Ferguson or like
How much is
Schoonmaker.
The problem with starting Cowboys
Dowdle,
defense,
yeah.
I feel like once you make defense a captain, you don't want to have either quarterback in the lineup. Because if the quarterbacks outscore the defense, then whoever has the quarterback as the captain wins.
But the thing is, Dallas has their foot on the gas like the entire time, at least the last like 4 or 5 weeks with their pass rate over expected. They're just, I can't see a world where Dak Prescott, even in a overwhelmingly positive game script, where this is a game where he could be taken out in like the middle of the fourth quarter, but he'll still get like 35 pass attempts.
Yeah.
Okay. So we don't have Pollard in, you said?
No.
I'd rather put Dowdle in.
Do we start Brandon Aubrey?
He's been very good. The problem with him,
number one kicker.
Problem with him is that I think it's just going to be extra points.
Well, then
we have
they're
9,600.
going to score that many touchdowns. If we think they're going to score that many touchdowns, then I don't think we should have the Cowboys as captain. This is my point.
Why?
Because I think that you want to lean into the idea that they steam. Like if you think of the Washington game, if they're going to score points like that, or pretty much any Cowboys game where they're scoring points nobody wanted a showdown because they had the defense as a captain.
That's not true. There's been a lot of showdown lineups. I want to say the Raiders and Bears. I think Raiders won.
Well, remember that game?
That said, nobody has ever remembered that game. I forgot how to ride a bike, but I remembered that.
Is Max Crosby, going crazy, and it was, I don't know. I just feel like you got to lean into the narrative if you're going to start.
But everybody else, I was going to say, well, okay. So what narrative is that? Is that playing Pollard?
Playing Pollard, it's playing Brandon, playing Pollard, Aubrey, and Jake Ferguson.
I don't think you need the kicker with that.
Yeah, sure you do.
Britt?
I'm out on kickers personally, but that's just me.
I don't see where I don't see how to take out I would still keep Prescott in. I'm fine with playing Pollard. Okay. If we still play Dowdle, that still gets us 7,000 to play Ferguson.
But I don't see how you fade Lamb. He's wide receiver too.
Okay. Well, let's just go Cowboys, Metcalf, and then all the star Cowboys.
Yeah.
It's the problem. The thing is, you need a defensive touchdown.
We can't do everybody. We can't. We would have to take out Pollard and put in Dowdle.
I think Dowdle's a nice pivot.
What's that?
That's why I think Dowdle's a decent pivot.
No, I like Dowdle a lot, and that gives us 54 to put in Gallup, Tolbert, Turpin.
You got to find a way to dilute the scoring.
I'd rather have Tolbert 100% than Gallup.
Like if Lamb is worth his price, then he's probably worth the price to be a captain. So, but it's like if Dowdle scores a touchdown and Pollard scores a touchdown and the defense scores a touchdown, now you've created a narrative where it makes sense.
But we still created a narrative where if we're assuming the Cowboys defense goes off, Lamb is a piece that you have to be able to keep up with everybody else.
So Cowboys, Dowdle, Pollard, Ferg, Lamb.
Would you rather have Ferguson or Tolbert? Tolbert for leverage, Ferguson more owned, but
yeah, I'm in on either. You guys make the call on that one.
Let's go with Ferguson. I like Ferguson.
Oh wait, no, we don't have. He's 62.
So
how?
Tolbert it is.
Cowboys, Dowdle, Pollard.
We don't have Pollard. We have Lamb, Prescott, Dowdle, Metcalf, Cowboys. We have 5,400.
So what are we thinking? Dak throws like 2 touchdown passes, but the Cowboys score more points than Dak?
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
The sack city, babe.
Get it in there.
Tolbert. We some salary on the flow. Save that lineup. Good to go.
I'm in. All right, what's the final lineup? Read it out.
Cowboys D captain, DK Metcalf, Rico Dowdle, Dak Prescott, Lamb, and Jalen Tolbert. Playing Cowboys onslaught right there.
Game's
Total
easy.
shipper we got.
Yep. You know what? I played the Bears defense last night and they crushed it. And Dallas is a way better defense than the Bears. So I have full faith in Dallas's defense at the captain.
100%. So stick with us here because we're going to get out of here. But Alarm Fantasy Football is coming up in just a few minutes here. Britt, are you feeling it on that too?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I was on standby, but yes, I will be able to go get cat food for the very hungry fat cat.
Well, I will be in the chat. I'm sure Britt will be in the chat as well. Coop and Howard Bender, of course, you can find on Alarm Fantasy Football right after this. Britt, Coop, anything else before we hop on out of here?
That's it. I got another show right after this, so anything else will be over there.
For sure.
Bada bing, bada boom, bing, bang, bong. Let's do it. For Andrew Cooper, for Britt Flinn, I'm Kevin Tompkins, and I'm not going to be the one to say
Toodles.
Toodles.